Hello, croeso, and welcome to the Fathers of Metal podcast, live here at the Evolution Studios in Ely, Cardiff, with myself, Daddy Huw.
And myself, Papa Ben, and this is the METALIDADS annual album review 2022. At the beginning of this year, I feel like a sportscaster, that's it.
Sportscaster.
Kind of, you know, when they do it at the beginning of this year. Did you ever think we would be in? But in all seriousness, at the beginning of this year, did you ever think you would be into half the things that you've ended up listening to? And
Are
really
you telling me, did I think I'd be getting into symphonic blackened deathcore? No, I didn't think so, but that's how it's ended up.
Getting the snobbery out straight away.
We're absolute genre snobs.
It's the only way.
It's welcomed at METALIDADS.
How else are you meant to know the difference between vegetarian aggressive grindcore and Scandinavian new metal? I mean, clearly, there's,
We're reading too much into this, I think.
I think we are, yeah.
So we're here for the annual album review, and we're going to be revealing our favourite album of 2022 in what has been a fantastic year. We've actually split everything into 6 categories. So we have got Best Overall Song, we've got the Most Disappointing Album, we've got the Biggest Surprise Album, Best Debut Album, Best Album by an Older Band, and finally the Best Overall Album of 2022. And of course there's been lots of discussions about which is going to be our favourite. So obviously, Ben, lots of honourable mentions.
A huge amount. I think this has been... We've done some rockperspectives in the past, which you can, while we're here, we might as well plug them. A rockperspective is where we chose a previous year in metal. Myself and Huw listened to a ton, and I mean an absolute ton of metal from that era, and we would then look at it in a retrospective perspective.
Absolutely,
that sounds like a song name. It is now, and we would give our verdict on it.
So far we did 1990, 1984, 2001. We were going to do 2020. That's still on the cards. Just got to make that episode. But
and don't forget 1980.
Oh, we've got 1980. That was actually one of my favourite listening exercises, as it was yours. You obviously discovered Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell album from 1980, which was one of your new fave metal albums from that era.
It was, yeah. Can't believe I never listened to it. In fact, it was, it was a pleasant surprise.
It was a pleasant surprise.
But compared to those, this has been harder to choose for me. Maybe not so much. I think. Because there's been so little in terms of disappointing albums this year, that's been an easier one to decide. The hard one is choosing best album, best song. They're the two particular ones, because there are some bangers.
My best song choice changed this afternoon. I had a definite best song, and I had to change it because I just didn't know who to give it to. I think the standard's been that good this year. And again, the listening exercise this year is we'll be listening to brand new music. And to be honest, between you and me, I've actually been choosing listening to the newer music over the old music, which I've never done in my entire life until this year.
No, I think... over the years, I've always played it safe. The bands that they've got an album coming out, great. And then you kind of put the blinkers on. I don't know if you do this, but I put the blinkers on and you just go, great. So-and-so's band are releasing a new album in June. Great. You kind of ignore everything up until that date, and then you only focus on that. And you'll probably do that maybe a few times a year if a few of your favourite bands release stuff. But that's where we've really pushed ourselves out of our comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And just jumped it like... to be honest, the best way I think we found was simply going online and simply searching album releases of 2022. And we did that right at the beginning of the year. So we kind of had an idea of what was coming. Yeah. And then as time's gone on, we've discovered new bands. Facebook groups have helped with that. I
have to say thanks as well, because of the Spotify algorithm. I've discovered a lot of things, and a big thanks to those at Napalm and Metablade Records as well, who've given us a lot of permission to interview a lot of these bands who happen to be our favourite albums of the year. Bands like Kardashev, for example, who might be mentioning potentially this evening. Absolutely. So it's just been we've been able to have that permission, and it's helped the experience. So we've talked about 1980. We're moving 42 years into the future.
42.
2022. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
So Ben, first category we're going for today is best song, or mainly your favourite song.
Yeah.
Because, you know, music is subjective, and one thing we forgot to mention at the beginning is we're not experts.
No,
we're just metal fans. We're trying to expand our listening, and this is basically, we want to share with you what we've enjoyed.
Absolutely.
And if we could teach you anything this year, it's basically try and get out of your comfort zone. So I highly urge you today, take some notes down, because this episode you're going to discover that there's more to just the Rammsteins, the Slipknots, the Megadeth, the Machine Head, the Ghosts, etc. So take a chance on some new bands, take some notes. And honestly, my favourite bands I've discovered this year are bands I'd never heard of until 2022.
Exactly.
So on that note, what is your favourite song, your best song you think you've enjoyed the most this year?
Okay, well, this was genuinely a challenge, but the way, I think everyone's got a slightly different way of categorising how they choose things. For me, it was what every time it went on, what blew your socks off, basically. Every time you listen to it, even if you kind of, and I fall into that trap, when you listen to so much new music like we have done, you can fall into the trap of just forgetting about stuff that you listen to, say, in January, February, March, because you're too busy listening at stuff that come out in November, for instance. But every so often, you put a playlist on shuffle, and this song came up, and every time it would come up, I'd totally forget about it until I heard it, and every time I heard it, it was, wow, like, fucking hell, I forgot about that, and it's like listening to it for the first time every time. That's the best way I can describe it. That's, for me, what this song was. So that song for me was Unleash Hell by the band, Enterprise Earth. Enterprise Earth, yes. Enterprise Earth, I think, if I remember rightly, I think I introduced you to that band this year, and it was a band that I had no idea about. Again, it's the Spotify algorithm, stuff on YouTube, seeing things on Facebook groups and deathcore groups. It kind of come up, and I thought, why not? This song, Unleash Hell, it's difficult to explain. It's kind of, I don't want to use the word polyrhythmic, because I think that's getting a little too pretentious, but it's got that type of feel in the riff. Throughout the whole song, it flows really nicely. The vocals are, they're crushing. As I said, for me, every time I listen to that song, it's like listening to it for the first time. Every time, it's so fresh. There's great variation in the vocals. It's not all just that crushing brutality of deathcore vocals. It kind of goes into like very melodic melodies. So overall, I think it's just a very well balanced song. But it's a song that just simply blows my socks off every time I listen to it, and I highly encourage you guys to also have a go. See what you think.
Thank you very much, Papa Ben. So your best song of 2022 was Unleash Hell by Enterprise Earth, and as a genre of music, if you're not familiar with the subgenre, this would be known as deathcore. So if you've heard of a band like Lornashore, even though it's a slightly different version of deathcore, if you really want to be a genre snob like you and I, but that's the general universe we're going for.
I think if listeners maybe aren't too sure of that, the one band that if they're kind of exploring into this stuff, Whitechapel's a good starting point for deathcore. Those are kind of there's a lot of bands that kind of started off who've got claim to fame for kind of starting the deathcore thing. But these guys, I think, are considered in some cases like the granddaddies of deathcore, along with maybe a few others.
Like Suicide Silence.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So Suicide Silence, Whitechapel, they're if you want a taste of deathcore, which, again, amazing song name, have a listen to those guys, and have a look at Unleash Hell by Enterprise Earth.
Do it. So Ben, I'm going to mention now my best song or favourite song from 2022, and it was going to be one of my favourite thrash bands. It was going to be Kreator's Hate Uber Alles, which has been a song I've been playing to myself all year round, but there's another song that's been basically there or thereabouts, and it's very controversial, because this band is normally included in with those bands which are pretty much the most memed bands in rock and metal, along with Nickelback, Five Finger Death Punch, Avenged Sevenfold, and to an extent Metallica. But at METALIDADS here, it's all about staying positive. If you like Nickelback, if you like Five Finger Death Punch, we don't care. If you enjoy it and it keeps you positive and it stops you from jumping off a bridge to a certain extent, then we don't care. We don't mock. You can like whatever you like, but this band is heavily mocked, and this particular song of this particular album, shush. That's
just before you say,
okay,
just for context of the listeners and the watchers, Huw has actually kept me in the dark about this as well. So I'm scared because I don't know what he's going to say. I'm half expecting him to come up with something like Imagine Dragons at this point, which again,
or Bro Job or something.
Oh yes. So I've been kept in the dark as much as you guys. So let's hear it.
So basically, reason this is my favourite song, it's actually very radio friendly. It's very catchy to sing to and to hum, etc. And I've listened to it very often with my two little girls, either in the car taking them to school, listening to it in the background in the kitchen, because it is very palatable. It's not heavy at all, but it's just grown on me because I've enjoyed listening with it to my family. And my favourite song of this year is Spillways by Ghost. Yes, I said it. How many subscribers we're going to lose now?
There's a few dislikes.
Straight away. Ghost. And Ghost is not metal. Ghost is not a metal band.
I don't blame them. I can't. No, I think Ghost is an interesting subject. I mean that's a whole video in itself.
It is a whole video in itself.
And it almost asks. There's almost a philosophical question there. When is metal not metal?
Yeah, I like to believe that we say METALIDADS, you can if you like anything from Bon Jovi to Behemoth, it's all within the same universe. And Ghost, of course, is on the lighter side. You will hear by the end of the podcast, I do like the complete opposite end of the spectrum as well. But there's nothing wrong with liking either end of the universal spectrum. So if you want to listen to a little snippet of Spillways by Ghost, or if you're into your Toto, which I am, best way to describe Ghost is pretty much Toto metal or ABBA metal. So very, very different to Unleash Hell by EnterpriseEarth. But again, that was my favourite song of the year. I did find it very, very difficult. I was going between that, again, Hey Tuba Alice by Kreator.
Anthemic, that song.
It is anthemic. Again, it's just one of those songs, because I used to listen to a lot of hair metal, a lot of power metal. It just makes you go like that. Yeah. It just brings the inner cheese, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
So my favourite song of this year, 2022, is Spillways by the band Ghost.
Interestingly, the reason why we've done a separate song and separate album of the year, because that doesn't always happen. We're bringing you, try and think of other things to bring you guys. It's purely because, as we'll discuss later, there are some albums where not one of those songs would ever even get close to your top 5.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as an album, as a whole, as like an entire package, as a whole meal, as some might say, it is the complete package. It's the full experience. Whereas sometimes what you want is just a mind-blowing appetizer, and this is what we're doing. This is the hors d'oeuvres.
The hors d'oeuvres, nice. You and your food references. So Ben, we are now going to our next category, which is most disappointing album of 2022.
Yeah.
And I believe you're going to go first again. So what is your most disappointing album of 2022 and why, in a nutshell?
Okay, well, so most disappointing album. I'll just go out and say it because we can talk about it. It is Slipknot's The End. The End So Far, I believe it's called. Let me just check my notes. The End, comma, So Far. So why is this my most disappointing album? It has nothing to do with the fact that I thought they were going to release another Iowa. That has been a big criticism of this album. A lot of people say, oh, well, I thought they were going to release an Iowa or a Volume 3 or something like that, or even not Psychosocial, what was it called? That album with Psychosocials on, you know the one. I didn't think that. I didn't go over with that level of naivety. When Iowa came out, they were in a very different place, arguably a much darker place. They're not there anymore. The problem with this album is, well, I think Hugh's got a lot of opinions, which I know there's a chance that they'll be coming up. First of all, track 1. People have joked to say it sounds like a Chili Peppers song. I don't. Although I think that's a little bit of a piss take, there is an element of that. It's definitely an element to that. And that really sets the album off on the wrong foot. And then after that, you might even be able to forgive it if the rest of the album kind of really upped the ante and gave it some, gave it really just punched you in the gut. Unfortunately, for me, it came across as a bit on the bland side, a little bit vanilla, a little bit tame, maybe. So it's not a bad album. You won't listen to it and go, that is shit. There's nothing apart from that first song. The album's fine, but in a year where we've had some masterpieces, and I think that's the best way to describe some albums. Absolute masterpieces. They just don't hold up. They just don't hold up. They're in a completely different place at the moment. I think it might have something to do with this was their last album on the Roadrunner record. We don't really know maybe some politics that have gone on behind that. I'm sure there are some. I mean, there almost always is. I just feel like maybe this has been more of an obligation. I'm sure there will be people who will not like me for saying that. But for me, again, as we said, music is very, very personal. Yeah. And for me, it just come across as, last album, let's just complete our obligation and move on from it.
So we go to the next chapter.
Yeah, and that is what I'm looking forward to. Okay. I actually am, in some way, this album is actually setting me up to looking forward to the next Slipknot album more, because I know it's going to be completely independently not just funded but recorded. Yeah. So anyway, that's my reason. Huw, while we're on the subject, what is your most disappointing album of 2022?
Well, believe it or not, my most disappointing album of 2022 is The End So Far by Slipknot.
Shut the front door.
Well, I'm going to basically put this in a very simple sentence. The album's fine from track 2 onwards. The first song, I thought it was going to be, it had that Chili Peppers, even Radiohead vibe going. If, for example, that was only going to be like that for a minute and a half, 90 seconds, and then it goes into absolute Slipknot, then great. But I was waiting.
They are known to be progressive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's definitely be some more progressiveness in their sound, but I was just waiting for that big, like scream. And it never came.
No.
I couldn't believe by the end of it that I'd waited a whole song in anticipation that there was a type of typical stamp of Slipknot was going to be at the end of the song. But it never came. And I was so confused by this song and its placing, and I was questioning its existence. Why did it have to be there? Yeah. So as I told you in the car on the way here, I am never going to listen to this album ever again, because I can never listen to any album from track 2 onwards. No. I just feel it's a disservice to the album. So if this song wasn't there, this album would be absolutely fine in the Slipknot back catalogue. Yeah, I suppose vanilla, a bit safe. Obviously, there might be other things afoot with the politics, etc. But the rest of the album I thought was fine. It was groovy, it had some really good grooves. Corey Taylor's still reasonably on top of his game. Yeah. Obviously, you can't put the same energy as you would have in I Work, because a lot more things were going on. You had addiction, etc. You had a lot more angst, depression, etc. But my worst album, least favourite album of this year, is Slipknot's album, just because of track 1 only. The album's fine, and this year I haven't actually been disappointed. I haven't been disappointed by many albums. No. Normally, if I have, I'd normally put them off. I'll just move on to another one, because I don't really want to waste my time. But unfortunately, my most disappointing album is Slipknot's The End So Far, just because of track 1.
I think that's very justified. I'm going to put you on the spot. Ooh. Was there any other albums that were contesting for this? If not, that's okay, but
not
was
many,
there anything?
Not many, because one thing, and I urge all metal listeners to drop all expectations of any kind when you're listening to music, because, again, if you're going to translate Slipknot into Metallica, you can't expect them to put out a Master of Puppets every album. No. A band has something like 6 to 8 years of almost like their perfect heyday. And normally after that, they start to dilute, because you have your most creative ideas in your earliest time as a band, and that's a constant thing. Yeah. And very rare bands can reinvent themselves and carry on doing amazing albums later in their career. And there is a few bands, and I'm going to give an example later. But, drop expectations and don't expect what you're going to... It's like the thing with the Metallica song, You know, people are the
new one.
Luxor Turner. You know, people are expecting too much from dudes who now are in a different place 40 years later.
60s.
They will be
late 50s, early
59,
60s,
60 years old, absolutely. So just, you know, they're mortal. People are mortal.
Exactly.
Don't expect too much. Give people the benefit of the doubt. And that's why we're saying listen to new music. Don't expect new energy from older bands. And that's why we're doing this podcast here today.
I think there's a place in the market for legacy albums from those older bands. They are your binge watch. They're your friends.
Yeah.
How many people sign up to Netflix? I believe that's what it's on anyway, or whichever streaming service is coming on, just to binge Friends. And they get to the end, and then they just put it straight back to the beginning, and they watch it again. Yeah. I think there is something to be said with bands. Older bands that are kind of in that age, they're at that age where they are releasing legacy albums. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as, like you say, you don't go into this with any kind of expectations of a completely redefined sound or energy or any of that, because it very rarely happens. It never ever happens, but it does rarely happen. That being said, and I agree with all your points, the only other album which it was kind of contesting for disappointing album was Megadeth's album. Yeah.
You said it.
I did. Sorry.
That album has been quite high on a lot of thrash metal lists of 2022.
So there's only it's I
feel like we're going to go down a rabbit hole. We haven't got much time.
No. I just feel the only reason why it lost out to the most disappointing, so it's technically a good thing.
Champion.
Yeah. It's purely because I even though I didn't have much expectations going into the Slipknot one, I had low expectations going into Megadeth. So it was kind of like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought, but they really stung me with Super Collider. That album. Shall I tell you what really is ironic? Super Collider. I've actually got that signed by the entire band. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I've got that album on disc, signed by the entire band.
Wow.
It's and I was so excited to listen to that album. Got it signed, thought it was going to be amazing, put it on, and I was like, oh, this is dad rock. and this was, getting.
They were dads.
Now we are.
Now we are.
I was about 24 when that came out, and that wasn't happy with that. But yeah, so it lost out purely because I actually had a lower expectation.
Yeah.
Instead of having no expectation, I had low expectation, even lower. But yeah. So, sorry, just put you on the spot there.
It's okay, no problem. So, basically, to summate that, both of our most disappointing album choices for 2022 is Slipknot, The End So Far. So, after that, let's raise the spirits a bit more.
Yeah, we probably should.
The opposite to disappointed will be surprise. So, Papa Ben, what is your biggest surprise of the year 2022?
Okay, this is, again, a band never heard of before, and it was a band that has been suggested by a member of our community, the METALIDADS community. I think they posted it up in our private Facebook group, and it was the album is called Nightside by the band Witchery.
Okay.
So I'd never heard of them before, had no idea what to expect going into this, and we were discussing in the car the best way to describe that album, and get the pipes out with the snobs, with snobbery. Black and roll is the best way to describe it. It's kind of blackened rock and roll. That's the best way to describe it. It's got very black metal-esque vocals.
It's sort of like the same universe as Venom.
It's got that very, very typical black metal vocal range as well.
Like the high-pitched screech.
Actually, rather than the high-pitched screech, it's more the really kind of gravelly, but not low.
Okay, I see.
It's not guttural like a death metal band. It's kind of that mid-range kind of rattle that you kind of get.
Cool.
So that's the kind of the vocal, but it comes with this real kind of like that punky rock and roll type of vibe that comes along with it, and it's an album that I couldn't name you any song. I couldn't, but what I can say is you stick the album on and you have a good time with it. you listen to it and you just
proper black and rolling.
Yeah, you're black and rolling. Yeah, you're just bobbing away, and it's great for the car. I got to say.
Okay, good driving music.
I would say if there was a category like best driving album, that would probably be it.
So it wins 2 categories.
Yeah.
An invisible, unofficial category we don't mention tonight.
Yeah.
The best driving album of 2022 is also, what's it called? Witchery's, what's the name of the album?
Nightside
by Witchery. Okay.
Yes, it's just good fun.
Cool.
Have a listen to it. Very when we say rock and roll and that punky vibe, it's very, that kind of typical punky bass forward. Very kind of like old school Green Day,
Nice,
nothing like Green Day, but the best way to describe the bass,
It's
very kind of mid-rangey.
Yeah.
It's played with the pick.
Nice.
And it kind of it keeps everything going when everything is stopping. You can still hear it kind of clattering away, and it keeps everything rocking and rolling.
Rocking and rolling.
So yeah, that was my This was my
biggest surprise.
Yeah, biggest surprise. I'm waving this around as well. But yeah, that was my biggest surprise of the year. Again, and it was just thanks to Papa Rob who suggested that from the group.
Excellent, fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much, Papa Ben. Again, it's just nice to come across new bands I've never even heard of as well, so I'm going to definitely stick that on my commute to work this week.
Perhaps we'll listen to it on the way home.
We could even listen to it on the way home. So yeah, good, same category. So biggest surprise of 2022. And again, this has been a very difficult category for me because things have been changing. I've been surprised by a lot of albums this year by bands that I honestly, it took me by surprise. Bands like Soulfly, they released Totem.
Oh yeah.
That was an album that was actually the top of my biggest surprise for quite a while. A band called Whitane, a black metal band from Sweden. They released an incredible album. But I'm going to go completely on the lighter side again and sort of rediscovering my sort of hair metal roots, because this has taken me by absolute big surprise, and I'm going to not go into too much detail, but my biggest surprise of this year is The Gang's All Here by Skidrow.
Oh, okay.
So we're talking like late 80s, early 90s, a band that did Youth Gone Wild and 18 and Life, Slave to the Grind, etc., with the famous singer Sebastian Bach. Now, Skidrow have been a band that have had a load of lineup changes, especially in the singer. The singer for a long time for Skidrow was one of my favourite bands, Dragon Force's singer, Tart from Dragon Horse.
Oh, okay.
I think he was with them for a good 6 to 8 years. But they had a new singer this year called Eric something, and Skidrow have been basically not taken very seriously, arguably for most of their existence, because people have got the gripe that they haven't got the original lead singer, so therefore it's not the real band. Like a lot of people treat Sepultura, no offence to singer Derek Green, is it Derek Green? I think so, but there's a big fan base sort of don't think it's the real deal. And I'm not a huge Skidrow fan. I only know, to be honest, the first 2 or 3 albums, and I haven't really listened to a lot of stuff. Not really because of what a lot of the fan base said. I haven't really dug into a lot of the material. But they released an album this year, and their new lead singer, if you're looking to listen to the best version of Skidrow, and if you like Sebastian Bach and that type of vocals from the late 80s, early 90s, this dude sounds like a new upgraded version of Sebastian Bach.
Wow.
So it sounds like an unreleased album from the late 80s, early 90s. And because the production of it is brilliant, the guitar solo, the riffing, it is from that universe of the late 80s, early 90s, from the filthier side of hair metal, like Guns N' Roses and Wasp, where it is a lot filthier rather than a lot cleaner, like Dokken and that stuff, or Def Leppard type of thing. So a lot filthier, dirtier type of rock and roll. And you said about having a good time with Witchery. This is my again the category for driving album. This has been one of my favourite driving albums all year, and it is simply the album The Gang's All Here by Skidrow, and there are so many songs you will basically be earworming, singing to yourself, going down the street in the car, like the title track, The Gang's All Here, which is the opening track. It really is good. And if you want to get back into Skidrow, you like your tough stuff like Guns N' Roses, you like the lighter, that type of rock, and there's nothing wrong with that, because probably most of our METALIDADS listeners are of the sort of grunge or Guns N' Roses era. Get into this album. You will absolutely enjoy it. So The Gang's All Here by Skidrow is my favourite surprise album of 2022.
Amazing.
Thank you. So then, Ben, we've kept it on a high for surprises, and then we're going to keep it in that universe of surprises. So this category is the best debut album of 2022. So what is your favourite or best debut album of this year?
Okay, well, this one, surprisingly, well, not too surprising, actually, quite a difficult one, because of the sheer amount of new stuff we listen to. That also, as a result, means we've listened to a lot of bands releasing their debuts this year. This one, I can't even remember how I found it. I think, again, it was through Facebook. Somebody, I think it was actually a member of the band themselves in one of the deathcore groups that are on Facebook, posted up saying, hey, we've just dropped an album. Our band is, the whole theme of the band, not just the album, the band is based on the Alien franchise, and more specifically, the actual xenomorphs of the Alien franchise. And so, the whole band is based on that. So they released an album this year called Dawn of the Eyeless Realm.
What's the name of the band?
Xenotheory.
Xenotheory.
Helps if I remember
that. What a name.
Xenotheory.
Xenotheory.
So completely themed around xenomorphs. I mean, even the name of their first album, Dawn of the Eyeless Realm. Famously, xenomorphs have no eyes, or appear to have no form of eyes. It's just a big dome over their head. Why did I choose this?
Why did you choose this?
Why did I choose this? So this was a completely self-funded. It was just a bit of fun for them. It was never going to be anything serious, and I think that's always when the best stuff comes out. So, there was never any. Originally, from memory, it was one guy. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, in a similar way to another band that released an album based on another horror. Chasing
Voorhees by our friend Papa Chris from METALIDADS.
But based local here in Cardiff as well. So Xenotheory started off as basically a one or a two-man band. They did all the work themselves. They recorded everything. They did all the instruments. They'd done all the vocals themselves, just as a tribute to the Alien franchise, to Xenomorphs, and that's that. They stuck it out and went, here you go, have fun with it. And the reception they've had has been exceptional. And considering this was self-funded, self-recorded, everything, you would never think that. The quality of recording on this, sonically, it sounds incredible. And if you want to talk about genre, I would say these guys straight up deathcore. I think there's no kind of beating around the bush. Straight up deathcore, but definitely along the more brutal side of deathcore.
Okay.
You have the genre which goes maybe a bit more melodic. No. This is just straight up, like, it smashes you with a sledgehammer at the beginning, and it just continues to smash you with a sledgehammer throughout the entire album.
Musically, of course.
Obviously, yeah. For me, they've managed to encapsulate that kind of 80s, that kind of real like that 80s kind of soundtrack, very atmospheric, very iconic of the Alien franchise, I suppose. There's the whole album. There's kind of like a feeling, an overbearing feeling of maybe dread is a good way to describe it. If you basically watch the first Alien film, that kind of feeling of isolation, dread, something's chasing you, that kind of, no, everywhere you turn you just don't know. It's basically it's that.
Like claustrophobia.
Very claustrophobic. That, but in an album, and then on top of that, you've got these crushing riffs, and they are crushing throughout the entire album. These vocals, which are they're real deep gutturals, and like they roar through.
Cool. So Dawn of an Eyeless Realm by Xenotheory is your best debut album of 2022. And technically, if you are a MetalliDads fan, and if you voted in the poll for what is the greatest horror movie of all time, which ended up being Alien, technically on paper, you should absolutely love this album.
Absolutely.
On paper, anyway. So there you go. So that's your favourite debut album of 2022. So thank you, Papa Ben, for your favourite debut of 2022. So I'm actually going to go for the same universe in regards to subgenre right now. So quite simply, my favourite debut album of this year is by... It's a deathcore band that have been sort of making murmurs on social media. They haven't been in maybe the top 10 most mentioned bands, but I can easily say this is the single heaviest music I have ever heard in my life. My favourite debut album for 2022 has been the album Malevolent by toobeyatyrant. And dude, it is just as the deathcore fandom keeps saying, it slaps, bro. It absolutely slaps. It just slaps, man. But again,
is that what they mean?
Yeah, it slaps.
It's so heavy, it makes you slap your own knee.
You slap your own knee, I think so. But again, the riffs are just crunching. Yeah. I basically listen to this album probably most mornings on the train, and I'm just in a train carriage full of people just going... Yeah. I'm just doing... I get that.
Bass face.
This face, the bass face. And we obviously recently, this week, did a playlist for the bass face. What is your top 3 bass face songs? But yeah, I've been doing bass face. Honestly, it is the heaviest thing I've ever heard. And I just constantly just stick my lip out and just do that. And I know you've said to me in the past, because you have heard this album, of course, for you... It does seem a bit on the long side, which I can definitely understand. But one thing I like about this is normally deathcore is a United States thing. Generally, these guys are from England.
Yes, they are.
And this isn't really a thing in the UK as far as I know. But there are bands like While She Sleeps, who were played in Cardiff, recently supporting Parkway Drive and Lornashore, which I saw in the CIA. And
they're not in the... I wouldn't say they're
not quite deathcore. They're more into the metalcore side of things. But generally, there aren't loads of bands. There isn't a huge scene of it here in the UK. So that's sort of another reason why I feel they're a bit of an anomaly, and maybe why they're not on everyone's radar. Possibly. But if you're into your deathcore, again, like bands like Lornashore, and I can actually probably say, in regards to deathcore, it is down the symphonic, blackened element of deathcore.
Get the pipes out.
So you get the pipe out. So very much just like Lornashore. So again, this genre, specifically very much symphonic end of deathcore, is even though this isn't really a category for this show, it's probably been my favourite genre of this year. And I would never have thought a couple of years ago I'd be enjoying stuff like this, but it's new, and I like that it's new, and I'm enjoying because the freshness of it. So yeah, quite simply, it is the heaviest thing I've ever heard. And if you want to hear heavy stuff, you're really pissed off, you've got lots of angst, you just like going like that in public transport. The album is Malevolent by toobeyatyrant. Yeah, so we're coming slowly to the end of the podcast now. We've got a couple of categories left, and this is sort of one I added in quite recently because I think it's an interesting talking point, because generally as people, as listeners, as metal fans, when you get to age 24 in regards to listening, you supposedly peak, and then you basically start listening to the same things over and over again. And
comfort listening.
Yeah, comfort listening, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you can listen to whatever you like if it works for you, but you know, we're obviously trying to break new ground in regards to expand our listening, and that's cool. But if you like listening to the same old stuff, that's absolutely fine as well. And that's what this category is really all about. This category is the best album by an older band. So what year are we going for as the cut-off point, Papa Ben?
So we decided it was a band that had to have released their debut album by no later than 1997.
Absolutely. So that's 25 years.
25
years. Okay.
Anything before that, fair game.
Cool. Fantastic.
Yeah. So, shall I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. So, this was actually an easier one for me.
Oh, okay, cool. Me too, actually. My easiest one too.
Again, mostly because the sheer amount of listening, there's so many bands that have kind of that I've listened to that have only been around maybe either, as we said, debuts of this year, or kind of, they've been around on the scene maybe the last 15 years, tops.
Yeah.
A lot of them not even, actually there's a huge amount of bands not even been really around in the last 10 years, They may have released like a single here and there, but not an actual proper release, maybe 5-6 years, So I do very much appreciate the kind of older school of metal, the older way of doing things.
Yeah.
As if you watch any of our rock perspectives, you will see. So when I heard this album, for me, it was very clear that this was going to be my favourite of the favourite release of an older band. And the band is called Immolation.
Oh, yes.
And the album is called Acts of God, or Act of God.
Great
Acts
album.
of God.
Brilliant album.
It's fantastic. If you like straight up old school 80s death metal, I've just ticked the box for you.
So you're talking like fans of Morbid Angel, Death, Dayside,
Death up until kind of, up until and including Human.
Yeah, nice.
Just before Human, I'd say. But yeah, absolutely. If you like that real old school kind of big chunky sound, super like not guttural, but just growling, that really deep growl. Everything's just kind of like that. With that kind of real old school chunky riffs and kind of just but there's a pleasant amount of groove throughout as well. You kind of, like you say with Toobeyatyrant. I'm not even going to try and say the album name.
It took me 4 takes to say it right.
But the Acts of God, just there are times where you listen to it and you kind of this is cool, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, just nice. Just you want to pull a face and just. So
go into like almost obituary territory, because they're synonymous with groove.
And I'd actually say that if you're a fan of obituary, you're gonna like Immolation's Act of God.
Yes.
So that was my favourite album from an older band, or a more established band, maybe.
Fantastic.
Is a friendlier way of putting that.
Absolutely amazing shout, by the way. Absolutely great.
Oh,
so that was your favourite album by an older band for 2022. So I'd probably agree with you. This is probably the category I found the easiest, because I like this album so much. I actually created the category just so I can say how much I love this album. There was no doubt I was never going to put Megadeth in here. I was never going to put Kreator in here, even though I like their album. I wasn't going to put Destruction in here, though I love their album as well, or Tankard. But keeping thrash, actually, I've not mentioned thrash metal at all yet, and we are thrash heads at heart. Thrash is our favourite thing. So I'm going to say that my favourite album by an older band for 2022 is by UK thrash legends xentrix, who released quite a few albums in the second wave of thrash in the late 80s, early 90s, and they released an album this year called 7 Words, which was a follow-up from their 2019 re-establishment, or sort of reforming of an album called Bury the Pain. Now, this album, I can say, is a very rare example, and I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, where a band potentially has released their greatest album, or best quality album, potentially in this band's case, 33 years into their career. Now, that doesn't happen often, and a lot of people have been saying this in the thrash circles, the extreme metal circles, and METALIDADS were actually very lucky enough to see them in Cardiff a few weeks ago, and interviewed the guitarist Christian in Fuel in Cardiff, and I was in the front row of probably the smallest gig I'm ever going to be, or the smallest venue I'll ever be at to watch a thrash metal band in Fuel in Cardiff. And I can definitely say that this, if I could reach for any xentrix album, it is this one. I will always go 7 Words over anyone for the rest of time. It is an absolute modern day thrash masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. If you like Testament, even if you like Master of Puppets and Justice for All era Metallica, you can hear, not hear Metallica in them, but it's that sort of era of thrash. There's a lot of mid-tempo songs which just make you go like this. There's a great song called Everybody Loves You When You're Dead. There's one called Spit Coins. There's one called 7 Words. It is a thrash masterpiece. So if you like your Testament, Kreator, Slayer, early Slayer and Metallica, you will absolutely love xentrix. So if you are an older metal fan and you like the best of Metallica, like Ride the Lightning, like Master of Puppets, and you want to get a gateway album to get into newer music, this is that album. So my favourite album by an older band for 2022 is 7 Words by xentrix.
What a choice. What a choice. And British thrash, again, maybe not something that you hear a lot of.
No.
Up until we had the new wave of British heavy metal that kind of really kicked things off in the States.
Yeah.
Then kind of thrash was kind of born there, and kind of arguably as well Germany.
Yeah.
But during that period there was a few bands that kind of they did a bit, but no one really broke through.
No, absolutely.
But this band, I think they've stood the test of time.
Definitely.
And as you said, I think they have released an album which arguably is possibly their best work. Best British thrash album. I mean, arguably you've got Enter the Grave to take on.
We're big fans of Evil, who we obviously interviewed in person this year in the Globe in Cardiff, which has been one of our highlights this year. But Hell Unleashed is an incredible album from last year, as is Enter the Grave. I don't know. This is up there. This album, 7 words, I think. In regards to packed full of riffs and energy, you will not think this is a band nearing 60 years old. No. Even the one of the album, the band members, I think the bass player was 4 years old when the first album was released. The other guys, again, are 56, 57 years old. But you will not believe this is an album by an older band. So again, if you're looking for the gateway album, to sort of get into extreme music again, and you're afraid where to go, where to look, because it's a massive universe of music, this is the album to go for. So 7 words by Xentrix.
Nice.
Papa Ben, we've made it to the final category, and this is really what we're here today to establish, is what is our overall favourite, or what is the best album for you and for me for the year 2022. After you, sir.
Okay, so tough choice. I've repeated that quite a lot. I think there was a few things that had to that had to be ticked for me to make it 1 into the top 5, and 2 the thing that made the difference, because anything in we've kind of got a top 5 which maybe we'll do an honourable mentions.
Definitely do some honourable mentions, because the quality has been so high this year. Our top 5 has been changing constantly.
So to get into the top 5, they had to tick X amount of boxes for me, and then for me to rank them, I had to split hairs basically. And so this one, out of the ones that will then become honourable mentions, this one just kind of took it for me. So my album of the year, drum roll please. There's a drum set over there.
There's actually a drum set over there.
It is the album Liminal Right.
Yes.
By the Death Gaze band.
Death Gaze spelled G-A-Z-E.
Yeah. Called Kardashev. An American... where are they from originally? I know it's America. Do you remember exactly
Arizona,
Arizona.
I believe Arizona.
You were lucky enough to interview their guitarist.
Nico Mirola, the guitarist. We spoke to him a few months ago. Thanks again to Napalm and Metablade Records for making that happen. And we actually spoke to them a week and a half before the album was actually
we had early
released.
access.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from the moment I listened to that album, it mesmerised me.
I remember quoting you, this is the album Fortitude by Gojira times 10.
Is that what I said?
Is that what I told you? Yeah. And he was like, that's impossible. It can't be. It can't be.
Oh, that's what you said.
That's what I said to you. Yeah.
No, and yes, that is exactly right. It is. It's an atmospheric bomb of an album.
Yeah.
It's pure atmosphere. The one thing, if you're not familiar with, so the genre death gaze, it's actually technically doesn't exist.
No, exactly.
It is a genre. Talking to genre snobs, we haven't come up with our own genres yet, so we're not in the higher ranks of it. It was their fans. It was Kardashev's fans who kind of just coined the term on Reddit, and they just went, well, fair enough, we're death gaze. So death gaze is essentially a genre called shoegaze, with obviously deathcore.
Yeah.
And again, even shoegaze, I'm not particularly clued up on, apart from the fact that it's a lot of focus on atmosphere and not so much on vocals. No. There are vocals in every single song, but they are not the forefront.
No.
You know, this album also has tracks which are essentially just spoken word.
Yeah, poetry, effectively.
Just if I had to explain this album in one, it's atmosphere.
Yeah,
just sheer
absolutely,
atmosphere. Yeah. It's enchanting. It's enchanting, and it just, every time you listen to it, it's just that.
It's dreamlike.
It is.
I've fallen asleep to this album numerous times.
In a good way.
It's almost like deathcore meditation music.
Yes.
Is that a thing?
Yeah,
it is now. It is now, when it's Kardashev's
Meditate core. We've done it.
Medicore.
That sounds like an American medicine band.
Medical. Yeah.
We've done it. We've cracked it.
Yes, at last. It only took 2 years.
Yes. It's difficult to describe because of how specific it is, but it's very atmospheric. It's very dreamlike. It's very when I say ghost-like, I don't mean the band. I mean kind of, it's wispy. It's wispy, but then you do have these real deep, guttural vocals that kind of are sitting there in that deathcore kind of zone, and then all of a sudden, their vocalist. Mark Garrett, thank you. He's very popular on YouTube. He breaks songs down and kind of reacts to them from a technical perspective. So he goes into these real deep deathcore growls, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he breaks into with operatic kind of
head voice.
It's
clean
incredible.
Yeah.
That twinned with the fact that you've got this atmospheric music kind of, but it's still heavy. Still heavy. You've got that heavy wispiness that's kind of in the background, and these vocals kind of backing it up. I'm probably not selling it very well. It's difficult to sell this album.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a good idea. How about we just listen to it, a little snippet? So
it's as if we planned that.
It's as if we planned it. Yeah. So if you can't quite put your finger on it, this is what Kardashev sound like. So here we are. And there we go. That's a snippet of it. Again, you can see the dreamlike elements of
absolutely.
it, can't you? I definitely see what you mean. And atmosphere, isn't it? Atmosphere.
And that's what it's full of. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, you can find this. The album is available on all streaming platforms. It's on YouTube. You just search for it. But Kardashev, Liminal Rights. Yeah, Liminal fantastic Rights. Artwork as well. Yeah, very understated. It's nothing kind of crazy, but it just really fits with the style of the album. So
I'm curious, just before moving on, again, maybe just giving me a sentence on each one, what would be your honourable mentions for the year 2022?
Oh, that's a good job. I got my list here. So this is ordered from two. I did a top 5. Number 1 being Kardashev. So I've got 2, 3, 4, and 5. So number 2, these two were fighting out to the end. EnterpriseEarth, The Chosen. So this is the album that Unleash Hell is on. Yeah. Just everything I described that song, that album. Yeah. That's essentially what it is. I've described that album as a piece of art. It's a masterpiece. It is. Whereas I've described Kardashev's Liminal Right as more of an artisan piece. Yeah. The difference being is a piece of art is something that can't be replicated, or you could not do the same thing again even if you tried. And I feel like it just with The Chosen by Enterprise, I feel like the stars aligned for that one, and it just they banged out the park. Whereas Kardashev's Liminal Right, it feels like this is what these guys do. Yeah, I feel like the next album will be kind of just as good. Different, I'm sure, but just as good. But it will still be that very crafted, composed style. So that's the difference. The only reason why this didn't get top, purely because if I found myself choosing between those two albums, it was literally a case of, say, 55% of the time I would choose Liminal Right.
So very close between them both.
Yeah, but every time this album came on, because of the sheer amount of music we listened to, you forget about it, and then it came back on, and every single time you went, oh fuck, that doesn't. And actually, this album is responsible for spoiling a lot of other albums, because you'd listen to an album, you think, oh, that was a good album. This came on, and then you go, oh,
this one's just blows it out of the
blows
park.
Blows out the park.
Give me maybe another example of an honourable mention, something that might have been quite close to the top.
So another very close one to the top, and again, this one, you know, was very close to kind of getting a bit higher. Traitors, what is it? Exiled to the Surface. Again, it was in a year where a large portion of our listening has been deathcore and various genres. Not just because that's all we've gone to seek out. It just happens that seems to be a lot of the pool that we've been able to dip into.
Yeah.
This is straight up like this is the like. I mean this. How would you describe it? This is pure exciting thrash. This is thrash through and through. It's pure. It's exciting, and it just
no frills.
No. And exactly. It's so exciting. Yeah. You listen to it, and there's so much energy, and and as soon as I listened to this album, I saw the artwork, and I actually thought it was going to be a death metal album.
Yeah.
I listened to it, it blew me away instantly, and then I've gone back and I've listened to their entire catalogue more than once.
Yeah.
Fantastic band. I cannot wait to hear what else they do. So that was a very close one to the top. Number 4 was also my favourite debut of this year. Xenotheories, Dawn of the Eyeless Realm. It was one of those that every time I put on, it was just, oh, this is so brutal. You just love it. You just love its brutality.
Hey, it's won a category anyway.
Exactly.
So there you go. Best debut for you.
Finally, another one that was in contention for winning best debut was K9's Carnage. K9 spelled with a K.
Yeah.
And Carnage also spelled with a K.
So it's French
Death
Slam?
Death Slam.
Death Slam.
Slam. Slamcore, Death Slam.
Yeah.
There's a few different ways to describe it. French.
Yeah.
French Death Slam, Slamcore, Slam. Yeah. And this is not trying to be clever. It's called Slam for a reason. Because it slams bro. Slams hard.
It slams and slaps.
Yes. It's just like taking a power bomb through a table. This is. It's just. It's that sledgehammer. Yeah. Boom, 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 just over and over again. But there's so much groove in this. Incredible. There is so much groove. So definitely deserves an honourable mention. It just missed out on number 4 and just missed out on best debut. Yeah. Just because of the sheer atmosphere that the other one brought, and it's that I don't know. There was it just kind of spoke to me a bit more. Yeah. But this definitely, I could understand why this could be someone's favourite album of this year. Fantastic.
Amazing. So, again, it's been difficult to choose things this year, but obviously just to sort of summate, so your ultimate album this year, and it's just made it because of how great it's been on the re-listen value, is, of course, Liminal Right by the great band Kardashev. Great, thank you very much, Papa Ben, for that. Again, it's just nice to hear about the honourable mentions. Again, the standard of this year has been so good. It's just been really difficult to choose. And as I said in the car on the way here today, the winner this year is 2022.
Absolutely.
Just because, again, the sheer quality we've actually enjoyed throughout the year. But I'm just going to start with my honourable mentions first. Okay. So, again, they could have easily been first, but again, The Chosen by Enterprise Earth. Yeah. It is a masterpiece. I've been reaching for it on a regular basis, and every time I hear it, it wows me. Yeah. Really wows me, especially the lyrical or the vocal work of Dan Watson of now the band Maya Law. Kardashev, Liminal Right, again, since I fell in love with the album as soon as I heard it, and I literally texted you and said, dude, bro, this really slaps, this album, you have to hear. I've never heard anything like it before, so that's been close. But In regards to straight up death metal, there was an album I came across. There's a great Facebook page called Cutting Edge Metal, and they normally give you these are the death extreme metal albums that have been released this week. And I came across this band called Amputate on this Facebook page, and the album is called Dawn of Annihilation, and it is one of the heaviest guitar sounds I've ever heard in death metal. There's loads of groove. If you like the bands like Cannibal Corpse's album we loved last year, Violence Unimagined, if you like sort
year
of
before, I think 2020.
2020. Oh, it's 2020, my bad, absolutely. Oh, I think so, either last year or 2020. But if you like that type of really like tasty sort of death with a lot of groove, tasty death, this album Dawn of Annihilation by Amputate will absolutely scratch that itch for you. And this is an album I've been reaching for constantly on a regular basis, and it's a reasonably I think it's only about half an hour long, so it's very palatable in regards to your time. Yes. In that regard, as opposed to having something over an hour like The Chosen by Enterprise Earth. Another one I could have easily put number one because it's probably the most revisited album I've listened to. It's still not my favourite, but it's very close. And it's basically, as I believe, members made up of old Sepultura members and a lot of Brazilian thrash metal musicians. And the band is called The Troops of Doom. Right, and the album is called Antichrist Reborn. And this album is also a debut, even though a lot of these guys are in the late 40s, early 50s. It is a debut for a band called The Troops of Doom. So if you like your thrash metal, which is on the almost death side, so we're talking bands like Brazilian thrash bands like Sepultura, like Sarcophago, even Soulfly, even to an extent Death. Yeah. It is the heavier side of thrash you would have expected here in the late 80s, when even like what bands like Kreator and Destruction and Sodom were doing, so a lot of the darker side of thrash metal music. This band, The Troops of Doom, if you like Slayer, if you like Sepultura, again, another gateway album if you want to hear newer versions of stuff you used to like in the 80s, in the heyday. You will love Troops of Doom. So that's a honourable mention for me, but my favourite album, overall album, there can only be one, of this year, 2022. It's a band and album you've already mentioned, and it's been my favourite band of this year because I've discovered their back catalogue of 4 albums, and I was lucky enough to interview the bass player a few weeks ago. It is Kreator, Exiled to the Surface, and this album, again, the production of thrash on this album is incredible. You and I are bass players. The sound of the bass is perfect in the mix. The type of sound you've got on the amp of the bass, it is perfect.
Fingerstyle as well.
It is fingerstyle as well. It's very quick. We're just going to have a little quick snippet because I don't want to talk about it too much. I want to let literally the music do the talking. Absolutely. So this is an amazing song called Total Thrash by Kreator, featuring the amazing Tom Angel Ripper of Sodom. And there you go. Again, it's really fast. These are one of the fastest thrash bands I've ever heard. I mean, Evil, our friends Evil, they're really very much on the fast element as well. Yeah. And they obviously had the special guest Tom Angel Ripper of Sodom, who we were, again, I keep name dropping all these metal stars who we've been lucky enough to interview this year. But German thrash is actually one of my favourite, if you want to say subgenres, or a favourite genre specifically in a style of a certain country. But again, the album Knee Deep in the Dead, which came out in 2018 by the band Kreator, a Thrash Command, which I think was their debut, Venomizer. Yeah. Their back catalogue is incredible. I just don't understand why these aren't being talked enough of in the thrash metal. Just the thrash metal scene, thrash metal universe. So
the other thing, which I think is something very, very cool, and it actually goes against a rule that we.
I know what you're getting to now.
Yeah. So on this album, Exiled to the Surface, there is a cover, and you could offer somebody a million guesses. They would never guess what they've covered.
Because normally you assume it's going to be by a rock band or a metal band.
Yes.
Because that's what metal bands tend to do. Yeah. Very little, very rare they do something that's an 80s pop track by bands like Wham.
You don't say.
You don't say.
It's funny you mention Wham. What did Kreator cover on their latest album, Huw?
It is, oh damn, I can't remember the track.
Careless Whisper.
Careless Whisper by Wham is the cover. But the thing is, they literally musically pull your pants down because you're listening to track 4 or 5 or whatever.
I love it when that happens.
Oh, I love it when that happens. Well, musically only, of course. So you listen to this song and you think it's just another amazing song on this album because the guitar sounds the same. Now I'm not very familiar with the lyrics of Careless Whisper, so you got the verse happening. I think, it just sounds like a standard Kreator song, and then all of a sudden you've got I'm never gonna dance again. And you're thinking, this is fucking Wham!
And the best thing about it, he doesn't use the word dance.
He doesn't.
The original.
He says the word mosh. Yes.
They slightly change it. Use the word mosh.
Yes.
It's perfect.
It is absolutely perfect.
It's the third song?
No, it's a fourth or fifth, I think, so I can't quite remember.
So it totally breaks our rule.
Yeah, it breaks our rule and it catches us by surprise. And you listen to the music and going, yeah, that sounds good. And you're thinking, I'm fucking headbanging to Wham!
I can't deny, I headbanged to Wham.
I headbanged to Wham, absolutely. It got our faith, so anyway, moving on.
So just a little snippet there. Yeah. That's something to look out for, and it honestly is fantastic.
And it catches you by surprise, and you will not believe you're enjoying this cover of a Wham song. And it doesn't detract from the album.
No.
Because the next song then, it goes back into punchy Kreator sound, and it just goes up the tempo.
What you're saying is, Careless Whisper pulls your pants down, the next song after punches you in the balls.
Exactly. If we're going to go that way, musically, that's the perfect way to explain it. Absolutely.
If you want to be punched in the balls musically...
Listen to Exile to the Service by Kreator, which is my favourite overall album of 2021 in what has been an incredible year for metal music.
We've made it. Just in time. It's been a wild year for all sorts of reasons. And yeah, I mean, I can't believe this year's over. I think from a personal perspective, I was looking at the just year in general. I would say this has been such an amazing exercise for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are times where my mental health has taken an absolute tanking, as everyone's does throughout a year.
Mine too.
I can't ever imagine someone ever trying to say that they've had one whole year of perfect mental health. I don't think it can happen, really. Or very rarely.
Especially with children.
Especially with young children, yeah. However, there have been times where I've needed to get help out of that gutter.
Yeah.
And this exercise has kept that fresh.
You've been saved by Wham. You've been saved by Xenomorphs.
I've been punched in the balls
musically. I've been got you out of the rabbit hole.
Yes, exactly.
But it's been a great year for metal, and again, for those older listeners, and that's absolutely fine. Again, we've given you some maybe tips on gateway albums and stuff. A lot of people are saying metal's heyday is gone. If you're comparing it to the thrash heyday of the 80s or the groove metal heyday of the early 90s, yes, the heyday is gone, but we've been expanding our listening, and I can definitely say metal is in absolutely safe hands if you just maybe trust the next generation that's coming up, because it really is in safe hands.
So what you're saying is don't listen to Gene Simmons.
Don't listen to Gene Simmons. Apparently.
Yeah. Well, no, he made that. The
Rock is
quote.
dead.
Yeah, Rock is dead. It's exactly. Not. It's different.
Yeah, it's different.
And it also,
fresh.
I think the thing that we can take away from this as well, as with bands like, as we said, there was, slipping that one in there, Chasing Voorhees.
Yes.
Same with Xenotheory. Yeah. There are a lot of bands releasing debuts which are self-recorded in bedrooms.
Yes, absolutely.
And the quality of technology these days means that, yes, I suppose if you want the absolute pinnacle of like sonic technology to get every last ounce out of your music, yes, you go to a studio.
Yeah.
But that comes with a cost.
Yeah, of course.
For instance, a band that released a debut this year, which we haven't mentioned, Scion, the project with Jared Dines
and Howard Jones. Great album.
Killswitch Engage and Light the Torch fame. Very enjoyable album. Recently found out that album, they had to fork out themselves. It was self-funded. $40,000 they paid on studio fees.
Wow.
Yeah, mixing, mastering, recording, $40,000.
Wow.
I mean, that. So if you want that, yes.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you're listening on Spotify at MP3 quality,
you
will not hear that. You won't hear that.
No.
unless you've got a sound system designed to squeeze everything, you won't hear that. So the fact that you can do basically everything from a bedroom, and still produce stuff that is not just palatable anymore.
Yeah.
It's professional quality that people pay good money for, and that can come out these days. It's just testament to what can happen when you put creativity with modern technology.
Absolutely.
So, and let's look forward to 2023. More of the same.
Roll on 2023, and again, it's a nice way to end there. At the end of the day, the theme of METALIDADS, it is very much, fatherhood, mental health especially, very much pushing the mental health. So again, one thing I've learned this year is, again, it's sort of, about managing expectations.
Absolutely.
Just be kind, because again, a lot of people are giving bands shit for not sounding like their 25-year-old selves when they're 60, but people are mortal. People have mental health issues. People have families. Times change, and we just need to appreciate...
calm down.
People calm down. We just need to appreciate that we are lucky to maybe be on this earth at the same time as a lot of these albums come out. So, if we can learn anything today, be kind, just, manage expectations. And I think the listening experience becomes a lot better and a lot more fun. So that's a great way to end. What an episode it's been. It's been such a fantastic year, again, listening to metal music this year. And as you said, 2023, roll on, already on my radar. I think January we've got Obituary's new album coming out, so that's going to be one big highlight for the first month of 2023. Oceano.
Very, they dropped a single earlier on this year. Believe they got an album coming out next year. Killswitch Engage.
Metallica.
14th
of April. That's probably going to be the biggest debated album probably of 2023, and we're probably going to do a reaction video to it or talk about it a lot more. So as we always say in METALIDADS, if it's whammy bars or weaning, napalm death or nappies,
it's always good to talk.
It is always good to talk.